Hey, welcome back to episode 3 of I'm Not Actually a Gas Station Attendant.
Hi.
Hey, it's so I think we were talking about we played in Indianapolis with Daredevil last time.
Yes.
And that whole thing. It's funny to think about, like, we had a lot of shit happen to us I think I'd already said this before, but like we had a lot of shit happen in a really short period of time, especially for our age.
Yeah.
Like, it was like we went from being a band that played every couple of months to like, and I guess it was still the case with us because as we kept going, Chris moved to Milwaukee, which made it so that we would just like kind of book a bunch of shows together and just kind of, but like we wouldn't see each other for like a month or two at a time.
Yes,
but
and much like the opposite of, say, the West Coast or whatever, living in the Midwest and trying to remember any days or events that happened due to the weather, you'd be like, well, remember that really gray day? Yeah, that was the day that we played in here. No, you can't do that because they were all gray days. But yeah.
So we'd gotten back from that show in Indy, and I want to say it was sometime still in the early summer. Like, we had come back from our little East Coast tour and were offered this show in Indianapolis, and we did that, and then we went home, and life went back to normal again. We would practice about once a week, and all that good stuff. But like we booked a weekend in Wisconsin. So we were playing in Milwaukee and in Madison. And Milwaukee was with what was that band? Scott Torgerson from Sinker was in it.
Amber Inn.
Amber Inn, yes.
Yes.
So we played with Amber Inn in Milwaukee. We might have played with another band. I don't remember. The thing I remember specifically about that Milwaukee show was that some like sort of frat boys wandered into the show and were just like running their mouth and like kind of trying to heckle us and all that shit, which would happen from time to time. It didn't really matter. And then Madison was with J Church.
Who I fell asleep during their set.
You did?
Yes. Yes, I did.
Well, we were tired. It was the summer, and yeah. So I don't remember a ton about Milwaukee. I think we played okay. We didn't get paid hardly anything because, just 90s hardcore, I guess. There wasn't very many people that showed up, and the person who had booked the show, I think she booked the show and then was on tour, possibly with Shotmaker as a roadie or something. Correct me if I'm wrong, Carrie. I don't remember exactly. Hopefully you're listening, and if you are, hi, Carrie.
Hi, Carrie.
But so her roommate kind of took over. I don't know if I assume she probably did the flyering and all that, and we got to the house and had to give Carrie's roommate a ride to Davey Von Bolen's house because the PA we were going to use was at Davey Von Bolen's house. Like I said, it wasn't a terribly remarkable show. Amber Inn was really good. I bought some records, I think, while I was in Milwaukee. I think I bought the like Mixed Nuts Don't Crack comp for probably $10, which good luck on finding it for $10 now. In the State of the Union comp on Discord. But yeah, I don't remember much else about it. I just remember we played, and I don't even remember. We stayed at that house that Chris ended up moving into because also, fun little fact, Carrie, the woman who booked it, who was on tour with Shotmaker, became Chris's girlfriend. And they lived together in Milwaukee. But anyways, we did stay the night because I remember we woke up and it was kind of rainy, and I watched Thundar the Barbarian on their TV. And
which is a solid choice.
Honestly, it's a great cartoon.
It really is. Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, so then we got in the vehicle, and I want to say this. So I think the Milwaukee show was on a Friday night, and the Madison show was on a Sunday.
Yeah.
So like, I think we just got in the vehicle and drove in the van and drove to Madison and just hung out in Madison for like a day.
Yep.
Our friend who later became kind of a member of Constantine, his name was Graham. He was also in Old Skull. I don't know if I don't think he was on. He definitely wasn't actually on any of the records, but he was a member of Old Skull, and now, from my understanding, he's a alt country sort of guy. But yeah, we went to his house, and he lived with Tim. I don't remember Tim's last name, but he was in that band, None Left Standing. Tim Burton, believe it or not. But yeah, but I guess you have the story for this one.
I don't have what? No, what?
the back rub.
Wait, I thought she lived there.
No, we went to her house actually the day. I think she made us spaghetti after the J Church show, and she gave me.
That was that girl. Okay,
her name was Erin. I want to say, wasn't it?
Yeah, and she was super friendly, and I talked to her a lot.
Yeah,
and then she followed us. I didn't realize that she followed us back to that house, but yeah, just apparently hit it off really a lot. And then she showed up at that house, and Rich is laying on the couch, like face down, laying on the couch, not saying anything, sleeping or pretending like he's sleeping.
Pretending.
And he's pretending, and we're all just talking. And she she was a bubbly, nice person, as is the style of Madison, Wisconsin. They'll even tell you that, we're just shy, dorky people. Someone recently told me that a few years back, and I thought it's very true. But she was like talking to everybody, and as she's talking, she walks around this couch that Rich is laying on and just starts massaging his shoulders and back, like for no reason. Nobody asked. No, he was not complaining about back problems or anything. This girl just started, and the horrified look on Rich's face, which I understandably, because who the fuck is doing this? Why? Was priceless. Like, she's just like talking to us and not even looking at what she's doing, like she's like kneading dough or something, and it's just like, what are you doing? Like, why are you touching this person? So yeah, that
to
happened.
make up for it, she gave me an Ashes shirt the next day, so that was cool. But
that was very funny.
Yeah, and then we played in a mansion in Madison with J Church, and who else played it? I feel like there was
Christie Front Drive?
No, definitely not. I feel like there was.
Or was it Ethel Missouri again?
It could have been. I mean, honestly, there was more than one. Like, I think every band on the bill was from out of town.
Yeah.
But I just don't remember who other than J Church. I remember that we finished playing, and Lance Hahn, R.I.P., the songwriter and singer and whatnot of Cringer, and then J Church. He walked up to me as I'm walking off with my bass, and he's like, oh man, I'm short, so I couldn't see you, and there was a lot of people in front of me, but you guys sounded pretty good. And I was like, oh man, that's awesome. This dude who's like, when I was 16, I was hearing his bands. Not that I was ever like a huge Cringer fan, but it still meant something. It goes a long way when you're just nice to people, just in general, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
But yeah.
So long as they don't start massaging your back when you're laying down. Yeah,
that was weird. But yeah, so we went. It was such a weird weekend. We went and we played in Madison. We got paid pretty well, which is good because we didn't get paid anything in Milwaukee. But
well, we did play in a mansion. I would expect us to get paid very well if we play in a mansion.
Well, yeah. So, there was a ton of people. Like, there was so many people at that show. It was one of the bigger shows we played for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think we got paid like $150 or something like that, which when you're a kid and when you're in a band and gas costs $1 a gallon, I mean, that's
Them's $1995 right there.
Yeah. So, yeah. And then we went to this woman, Erin's house, who had earlier tried to give me a shoulder massage, which really perhaps I may have overreacted, but I was just not in the mood for it. But anyways, she made us spaghetti, I want to say, and then she gave me an Ashes t-shirt. And then before we left town, we went to someone's house, and I don't remember whose it was, but Basil from Further Beyond Records was there. I'm not sure why. But, like, Chris didn't want us to leave. He wanted us to stay in Madison and hang out and then drive home at, like, 3 a.m, which all of us were like, no fucking way. It's Sunday night. I have to work on Monday. We need to get home.
Yeah.
But anyways, I remember that Basil had jumped up on top of our van and was stomping up and down on the roof, which made me really angry, and I got kind of aggro and punched up at the ceiling of the van. Like, fucking stop it! But yeah, so that I don't know. Strangely, I thought there was more stories than that with that show, with that series of shows, but yeah, I guess that's it. And then
uncomfortable massages,
yes,
kiss posters. I fell asleep during J Church. Someone stomped on our van.
Yeah. Oh, and I think that's the first time in my life I had ever had black bean hummus, and that was pretty good.
Yeah.
And I feel like we also got some like tofu from somewhere.
Probably.
Yeah. So, but I don't remember much. Oh, I remember there was a drunk woman sort of wandering around the state capitol, and she was wearing an Alternative Tentacles t-shirt. So Joe was like, "Oh, we should invite her to the show." And she didn't know what the fuck we were talking about and seemed very confused and bothered by the fact we were talking to her to begin with.
She did not want to talk about No Means No at all. A huge disappointment.
That's the kind of like where you don't realize that like maybe someone has like a Jello Biafra spoken word, or maybe they just happened into a like Goodwill and found a shirt with a Alternative Tentacles logo on it and didn't know what the fuck it was.
Yep.
But we were just like, we were young and naive. And in fact, I think the night before when we were in Milwaukee, Joe and I were walking down the street. Maybe I was at that record store and where I bought those records, and we saw kind of like some crust punks and invited them to the show, and they're like, "Yeah, I don't think so." I think they had rented some movies from Blockbuster. They were just like, "Yeah, Blockbuster. It's a Blockbuster night.
We're gonna go home and watch Suburbia for the 50th time."
But to me, like at that point in my life, I just like, "Oh, you have dreads and have a nausea patch on your fatigues." I mean, we may not be into all the same bands, but like,
and that's kind of why there's such a like, and you know, this is partially because of the internet, but like a huge backlash against people wearing band shirts that they don't know is because that used to be a signifier. If you were in a sea of assholes in your shitty little town and you saw that one person that had something you might be able to talk to them about. That was like your only lifeline, you know, and
well, and we didn't live in cities large enough to have like these, like, you know, in Kalamazoo, it was like, I mean, there was definitely a dominant, like what everyone was into, but there were bands, there were people who were into different stuff that were still part of that scene. So we didn't think anything of it. Oh, well, you know, like the dudes from Fletcher don't necessarily like Manumission, but like, you know, they're our buddies and we can talk to them about records and stuff, and they're going to show up at our shows and we're going to show up at theirs, you know?
Right.
But, yeah, so there was that. And then I guess the next one was Indianapolis Fest, and this one's where you kind of take the wheel, because my story is significantly less interesting than yours.
Yeah, this is kind of like one of the early Quentin Tarantino movies where you see it from all different sides. So we caravanned. Again, we did this a lot for some reason. Mm-hmm. I think it was just because sanity. We didn't like each other. Right. It's just to save sanity, and plus a lot of our friends were going, so we all comfortably rode in separate cars and stuff. My friend Paul Nichols came with. Jihad came with. Was there anybody else?
Joey Mapes was with
Joey
you.
Mapes came with. So we all took, like I said,
Oh, Sean cars. Barney was also with you guys.
Sean Barney, yes, he was, because he plays a big role. So we're in the middle of nowhere, which is most of Indiana anyway. Mm-hmm. And absolute offense meant, by the way. And the van broke down. Long story short, Chris's van, which was a white van with a big red square on the side of it for some reason, broke down. We could not figure out what the problem was. Thankfully, gearhead Sean Barney of the Deconstruction was with us, and he kind of knew what to do. So since we had the caravan rolling, they could go get parts while we waited. And this was it on I want to say it was on a Sunday. It was on a weird day.
It was on a Friday night. It might have been, it was on a Friday night because, I'll tell my side of the story.
So it was like, oh shit, I hope something is open because it's a weird day or whatever. So anyway.
It was just later in the afternoon, I'm sure.
So they take off in I think Craig's car from Jihad. So again, we're nowhere near an exit. We're nowhere near anything. And so we're just sitting there and we're kind of bored, and we've got the van, and as if by magic, a traffic jam just happened, which happens a lot in Indiana, actually, because they're forever fixing the fucking roads, and it's never fixed. So this magic traffic jam just pops up, and it's at an absolute standstill in the middle of nowhere again. So for some reason, we're like, all right, let's give these people a show. So we took some drums out. We took some horns out, which I believe Joe had like a couple horns at this point. So we almost had a ska band going on. But instead of playing anything, we just gave them kind of a tribal, sort of real low rent crash worship kind of set, and just pounding on stuff.
Wasn't it in the divider on the highway?
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes, we were stuck in a very wide median between, the north and south, east and west roads, whatever. So there's plenty of room for us to be in the middle of this road. Sorry about that. So we're doing this. I believe I gave up my sticks and drum to someone else so I could do karate kicks. So I was like, kind of doing my best crane kicks, Karate Kid style, at the traffic. Someone threw us a beer. They're like, hey, good set, y'all. Here's a beer, which I believe, I think Josh grabbed it, Josh from Jihad, and then Derek immediately dad banned it. It's like, no, you can't have that. I'm the adult here. No, which was really funny. And then traffic just dissipated. As soon as it appeared, it disappeared. And so we packed everything back up and we were bored again. So there just happened to be a ball in the median, a red ball. And so we're like, well, I'm going to get this ball and we're going to play stickball in the middle of a median, in the middle of nowhere in Indiana.
In the middle of rural Indiana.
This seems like a great idea. So we just start batting this ball around, like, throw it, I'll hit it, and then you catch it and something will happen. And that was our entertainment, and because we did not know, no cell phones, no nothing. We didn't know when they were coming back with the magic part that would fix the van. And then suddenly a ambulance comes screaming up, just jams into the fucking median. It's a grass median. There's no curbs. They just roll in there, jump out in full emergency style, and they're like, who's hurt? And we're just like, again, like I'm holding one of those thin balsa wood things that they use to staple flyers to, as a bat. And I'm like, what? And they're like, who's hurt? Who's injured? And we're like, nope, we're just playing stickball. van's broke down. We're just waiting. And they're like, okay. And then take off. And we're like, what the hell just happened? That's the weirdest thing. So maybe 5-10 minutes later, just battalion of cops. I'm not shitting you. Just like 4 or 5 cops just roll in. They got the fucking canine car with the window down halfway, and the dog's pissed, and just like, and they like hands on guns. They didn't have them out, but they had hands on guns. Got out of their cars, and they're like, everybody against the fucking van, and they were like pissed. They were ready to go. And so we're just like, drop the stick, drop the ball. We just kind of back up against the van, and they're like, we got reports that there was a gang fight out here. A gang fight in the middle of nowhere, Indiana. And the reason being, I've sussed this out through the years, is there was a fenced in community. There's a suburb on the other side of the highway. There was a wall, and somebody must have called in, and I think for maximum, response, they were like, yeah, there's a gang fight, I guess.
The part that gets me about it is like, why do they think that gangs like have drum circles pre battle? Like, this isn't fucking Game of Thrones or some shit.
Maybe they were like Confederate cosplay fans or whatever that is. What are their reenactments? They're like, oh shit,
Union's at it again.
So yeah, we've got this car with a drooling, raving police dog just snarling. They got it down for effect. The dog's freaking out, and we're just standing there like, clearly, we're all big pants on and stuff, and just like, what the fuck are you talking about? Everybody's smirking and trying not to be an asshole, because that's what you do when you're a kid, and the whole situation is ridiculous as it is. Derek from Jihad is completely professional. He's like, I'm in charge here. I'm in charge of all these people, because no one was of age that was there. And so he totally like took charge, calmed the cops down, explained there's nothing going on. We're just, van broken, yada, yada. And the cops are just like, you get that part, and you get this van fixed, and you get the fuck out of here. Like, they were so mad that they, had to get all pumped up to do nothing.
And as I remember, actually, I don't think the van got fixed that weekend. We just basically, I think the van got towed somewhere, and Chris came down the following weekend to get it. Because the reason I say that is because we all had to ride in different vehicles and like just fucking pile up in separate vehicles. But so here's where my take is from it. I guess Derek was with you, but the way I remember it, so me and my friend, my buddy Dietrich, and our friend Adam Kuthi, who was in It So Gray, all rode down together. Listen, we were straight edge kids, and I guess I probably didn't want to be around, non-straight edge people or something. I don't know. That's an exaggeration. But anyways, we were driving down listening to the new Shelter, which was, I forget which one. Mantra had just come out, and in different records, and well, not records, but tapes and CDs or whatever. And we got down to Indianapolis to the fest, showed up there, and the way I recall it, we walked in the door. Dietrich and Adam probably paid, and I was like, "Oh, I'm in a band." So they gave me a wristband, and Joel and Derek were there. And Joel and Derek were with our friend John Gick from Fort Wayne, Indiana. And they're like, "Oh, we're going to Taco Bell." And I was like, "Okay, I'm going with you." So we went to Taco Bell, and they're just like, "Where are your bandmates?" I'm like, "Fuck if I know." I don't know. They're probably smoking pot or something. But I mean, I probably didn't say that. But yeah, so we went to, I had no clue, and I was just like, "Yeah, I don't know. It's weird they're not here yet," because we took our time. But yeah, of course, you guys had like probably 15 people in your entourage.
Yeah, there was a lot.
So there was that. Dietrich didn't fuck around with that kind of stuff. He was just like, 3 people in my Ford tempo or whatever it was.
Yeah. It was a 4 tempo.
Yeah, with a bass system, by the way.
That's why no one else could. Yeah, the bass ride's the fourth member. Okay.
Well, it was in the trunk, but what I
couldn't ride in it then.
Yeah, so what I remember is, time kept passing and passing and passing, and still no clue what was going on. And I think someone finally was like, oh yeah, they're broken down somewhere between here and Kalamazoo, and they're getting reinforcements to come pick them up. I think as like Fugazi was ending their set, Sean walked through the door. I'm like, Sean, where's everyone? It's like, oh, we're going back to get him. I think it was only, and you might be able to correct me. I don't know. Like, our memories are going to be different on this, but how far was it from?
I don't even know. I mean, I'm sure it wasn't that far away, but the van was completely fucked. So
it was like an hour and a half. Yeah. But
yes, and by the way, we technically played with Fugazi. Technically, because they played the fest and they played the first night and we played the second night and completely missed them. So.
I didn't, but yes.
You didn't. I mean, half of us did.
Didn't Paul Nichols, he had bought some cookies that had lard in them, and he was really afraid that, like, some vegan straight edge kids were going to beat him up for having lard cookies?
I don't know. Oh, I hope that's true.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want him. I didn't want him to be in with fear, but that's a good story,
Yeah. Well, and so we ended up, I don't remember how, but we ended up at Bill Sprague's house with his roommates, entertained us while we just sort of, I feel like Andy Cornell was somehow with us. Well, he was definitely there at the fest, but I don't know if he was with you guys or if he was with us.
He might have been with us, but I definitely remember him being there, but yeah.
Yeah, I do too, because I have a story about that coming up as well.
That's a good one.
So we ended up there and just waited. I think we slept, like, Bill's bedroom was down in the basement.
Yes, it was.
And we all slept on the floor, and then we fell asleep, and an hour or two later, Bill comes downstairs, and Bill and Joey Mapes and Josh and Chris and maybe a couple of other people decided what they were going to do with after getting back from driving that distance was they were going to smoke pot and listen to Flying Saucer Attack.
That's what you did.
Yeah. So I remember, like, I went upstairs, you went upstairs, Andy went upstairs, Sean Barney went upstairs, and we all just kind of, like, I don't know that I went back to sleep. Andy definitely did.
Paul went downstairs because he liked the smell.
Yeah. And so anyways, we're, like, sitting there. It's probably 5 a.m, and Sean, like, picks up this, like, hollow body guitar that was sitting in the corner, and Andy's dead asleep. I asked Sean, I'm like, Sean, do you like hollow body guitars? And he starts to give an answer, and Andy pops up as if he's like a vampire popping out of his coffin and says, only if they're pink, and then falls back down and goes back to sleep.
Oh, that was classic Andy moment. Yeah.
Yeah, we could make a podcast just as stories of our friend Andy Cornell and his sleep picadillos.
Yeah.
There was
had a lot of them.
Yeah, there's just one I'm going to throw in. I hope I'm not, like, I don't think this, I just think it's kind of funny. We lived in the same house together, Andy and I, and his bedroom, well, all of our bedrooms had stucco walls and ceilings. And one night, he slept walk frequently, and at one point his parents saw him, woke up in the middle of the night, and he's jumping down the stairs. His bedroom was at the top of a small flight of stairs, and he's jumping down the stairs, and they're like, what the fuck are you doing, Andy? He was dreaming that he was snowboarding.
Yeah.
But anyways, yeah, so we had stucco walls, and he had a dream that a wall was going to fall down on him, but he couldn't figure out which one was going to. So he was running from wall to wall in the room. He wakes up in the morning and there's cuts all over his knuckles and palms.
Oh, God.
Where he was trying to keep up these stucco walls in his sleep.
Jesus.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I know it was bad for Andy. Like the one time, this is pre all of these fest shows. Just one more story. We went to stay at this young woman's house. Her parents were out of town. We went to just hang out. It was just seriously an innocent, like drinking fucking Kool-Aid and eating popcorn and watching scary movies, sort of like sleepover. Our friend Gordon from Toronto was there, and Andy was with us. We all went to sleep probably around 1 a.m. on this like nice carpeted floor, and around 3 a.m. he's screaming at the top of his lungs like someone is trying to kill him. And I remember Gord with his like kind of French tinged accent. What the fuck is going on here? That probably sounded more, I don't know. Anyways, I'm not good at accents, so.
No, it's good. It was good.
Yeah. But
yes.
Yeah. So I had shaved my head. I don't know why I thought to do this. This was probably in October, somewhere around there, September or October. It was early fall. It wasn't like terrible, but it certainly wasn't weather where you should shave your head. And to me, I don't know why. I was just like, I didn't think that shaving my head would make me that much colder than if I had a full head of hair. So before we went to Bill's house, I remember we were hanging out in some supermarket parking lot, like a Marsh's or Meijer or whatever is in Indianapolis. Marsh's are big and so are Meijers. But I ended up buying like a ski cap beanie type of thing that was a Flintstones one. So, yeah. But I just remember wearing this like goofy fucking Flintstones like winter, beanie that was probably meant for a 8-year-old in the parking lot of, somewhere in Indianapolis. But
So we played this fest, and it was in a large concrete, just echoey room.
It was a proper like venue, really, but like because it wasn't packed to the brim after
right after Fugazi and the makeup. Mm-hmm. So yeah, on the second day, honestly, a lot of it was to me not very memorable, except for we played on the floor like we always did. And of course, it sounded like shit. And there's video of it.
There's video of it. Yep.
Go on YouTube, you'll find it. My bass drum kept sliding everywhere because I was too dumb to build a drum rug. And if we're gonna play on the floor, you might as well have a drum rug. That's drummer 101. But I flunked that course. And then there was the First of all, I know Rich can shed more light on this, but there was a band, Abnegation, that played, and was it rumored that they were hardline?
Well, they were at one point. By that point, they weren't. But our friend TJ, so just about everyone from the Kalamazoo scene was at this show.
Yes,
including our friend TJ Doyle, and he was drunk. He had just broken edge recently, and he was drunk. And the singer of Abnegation, Iggy, who I talk to online now, some from time to time, he was wearing a Morrissey shirt, and TJ was kind of heckling him, but not even really heckling him. He was just being obnoxious and drunk, and he at one point I remember he was standing up on a chair and was like, we hate it when our friends become successful. And Iggy's just like, stop being a dick or whatever. He's like, but I love Morrissey. Which, to be fair, TJ did like the Smiths and Morrissey a lot. Yeah, so it wasn't. Yeah. But yeah, he was just drunk. And obviously, if you don't know the dude and he's drunk and he's just talking, I could see why it would be perceived as heckling, and it was kind of low-key heckling. Honestly.
And it was also, we heard that they were like pro-life or something, so it was like, oh, well, fuck that band, we're going to make fun of them, and on top of that, again, if you review the first episode, if I put that in there, Kalamazoo was staunchly against moshing and stuff like that, and this was definitely the time when everybody was coming out. Like, I remember dudes in tracksuits like doing the windmill thing, like they were going for it. And so that was also, since we were being snooty, we were like poo-pooing on that. So yes, after TJ stood on the chair, I came over and sat down on the chair, and we put the chair kind of in the middle of the mosh pit, as it were. And TJ
which wasn't very active, because there was probably
wasn't enough
50 people in maybe 100, but it was such a big venue that, like, unless you have 500 to 700 people, it's kind of pointless.
So I was sitting there, legs crossed, just casually watching the band while TJ had his hand on my shoulder in the middle of the mosh pit while people are windmilling around and stuff. And that was kind of that kind of triggered the next events, because then a couple bands later, I don't remember, but Jihad got on stage.
Jihad, I think, was the closer for the evening. I think they were the last band to play that night. Yeah.
So, and if you don't know, and I actually recently read a discussion about Naked Guy Hardcore. Everybody in the Kalamazoo contingency would get naked for Jihad. A lot of people would get naked for Jihad. I don't know why, but it just kind of happened, and whatever. That's fine. It's not neither here nor there. But that's
probably the thing that everyone will remember about Jihad is the
correct.
Fact. So everyone will, if anyone ever saw Jihad live, that's the thing they'll remember, is people got naked for them and would dog pile naked.
That's the thing. I even got on stage and took my shirt off, which, by the way, was one of those, it was a screen printed tuxedo on a black shirt, which it was a nice shirt. And I swung it around and threw it out in the crowd. And so I was shirtless while everybody else was completely naked. And everybody dogpiled, and I was on the bottom of the fucking dog pile, and that was really scary, actually, because I was like,
I was down there, but I was certainly above you, and I certainly had probably, even though I was much thinner then, I probably still had 30 or 40 pounds on you as well.
Yeah, it was scary just to have a bunch of, not because they were naked, but because it was like hard to breathe. So everybody was naked, and the set ended. And everybody was looking for their clothes, and they couldn't find their clothes. And people kind of, not like panicked, but obviously were quite concerned, because they were naked in a venue.
And it was 45 or 50 degrees outside.
So it was Indiana weather, and there's a bunch of naked dudes going, "Where the fuck is my clothes?" And so we're trying to improvise, and thankfully, I don't know if I brought it in or just happened to have it in the car or van, whatever, but I had my suitcase with all of my stuff in it. So I provided shirts and pants for those who were, which means I think our friend Adam Kuthi from Inso Gray, I was like, okay, here you go. And so Adam Kuthi is wearing a yellow t-shirt and gray corduroy bell bottoms. The yellow t-shirt says, I'm a scrap cutter, and it has a little Zorro cartoon guy cutting the word scrap. It says, cut scrap. And I realized how dumb I dressed when I saw him. I was like, oh, wow. Maybe that's
Well, you guys were roughly the same size. You were thinner than him, but you were both about the same height.
Yeah. I was like, oh, that's not a good look. But later, it was revealed that Abnegation hid their clothes, which,
on one end it's like,
ribbing.
Yeah, it was, on one day it was like, looking at it, it's like, oh, that was kind of mean of them. But then I was like, well, and Jihad and Abnegation specifically kind of had like a adversarial sort of relationship with each other. So like, it was expected. And then like, it wasn't that big a deal in retrospect, but
it was a really low rent Midwest kind of Spaz rivalry. Spaz was always talking shit on bands. That was ours. It was like, hey, you guys, I'm gonna hide your clothes. Oh, that's it.
Yeah. So, well, and then I don't remember.
We came out and we were getting ready to go back to Bill's house, and Bill decided to roll by the abnegation van and talk a little shit before we left. He's like, "You guys want to come over and smoke some weed? Huh?"
Jesus.
Just like gave him this weird vibe, and then like drove away, and it was like, well, that happened.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
kids.
So that was that fest.
Yeah, well, and we all had to, like I said, I'm pretty certain the van wasn't fixed, so we all had to pile into different vehicles. If I recall, yes. You rode back with Craig from Jihad and Andy Rich from Initial Records.
Yes, and we listened to Neurosis and Palace Brothers all the way back.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Didn't you say you also listened to Mule?
Probably, yeah. We listened to some very 90s things all the way back.
Yeah, Craig and Andy were tight. And then I rode with Dietrich, and I think it like Joe basically like guilted him into like Dietrich's like I can't take more than 2 people, and Joe's like, dude, you can't like abandon people here. You have to fill up your car. So I think it was me, Adam. It wasn't a big deal to me because I sat up front. But like, yeah, Adam, Andy, and I don't remember who else rode with. So that happened, and then there's Ann Arbor.
And then there's Ann Arbor. Oh boy.
Ooh, yeah. You know, like when people talk about us being crybabies, it all pretty much originates from this show. Yeah. I had just moved out on my own, and so it was our first road trip where I was really awesome. I was like, oh man, like gonna go to Ann Arbor, and then we're gonna drive back, drive the 100 miles back, and and then I just get to go up to my bedroom and crash. I don't have to deal with any adult humans. Although technically I was an adult human by that point, but yeah, so man, did we ride? Yes, we did ride in separate vehicles. We should be having
a tally of how many shows we played where we rode in separate vehicles.
Yeah, I don't remember much. I just remember showing up in Ann Arbor, and we ended up. I ate the first good falafel I had ever had, because prior to that, all I had been eating was Fantastic Foods box mix, and we went to Jerusalem Gardens, which if you're ever in Ann Arbor, I highly recommend Jerusalem Gardens to this day. It's still some of the best falafel in the world.
Damn.
Yeah, but
you heard it here first.
Yeah. Yeah, so it was the first time, I think probably the first time I tasted baba ganoush too. But I just remember us like ending up in downtown Ann Arbor. We met up with Aragorn. He took us to Jerusalem Gardens, and then we walked back to the venue, which was it was called the Half-Ass Inn. A lot of different. I've played that venue more than once, strangely. Grade was booked to play, but I guess they got detained at the border. Yeah. So, anyways, we got in there. For some reason, there were people from Chicago at the show. I have no idea why. They were just there hanging out. I think they're known as Billy now, and then another one by the name of Mary, who I believe is still Mary. But they were like, we played pretty early on in our set compared to normal. You freaked out and like started wrecking your drum set.
Yeah. Oh yeah. We're all having a real bad time.
I think I was the only one who was like not in that mindset at that show. Right. Like I was just kind of like, oh, hey, I'm here. My friends are here. I'm stoked to see my friends and play music and hang out with my Canadian friends, because Gord again from Anima / now Deranged Records was there with a few other friends from Canada, and yeah, it was fucking awesome. But anyways, yeah, you on the other hand, I don't think you could classify that night as awesome.
That was, decidedly not awesome.
Yeah.
Basically, I mean, we'll be professional about this. My first relationship was not good, and I was just trying to make it work, and it was not working, and the strain was really getting to me at that point.
And it was pretty early on, strangely, even.
Right. Well, and that's kind of a big red flag, but we won't go there. So, yeah, I think at that moment I was just having a real bad time, and so much so that I don't even. I mean, I blocked out a lot of memory from that even anyway. So, yeah, I kind of self-destructed in the middle of early on in the set, and I think while we were still putting stuff back together. Did Chris say some things too?
Well, no. So what I remember is those two people from Chicago. Hey, punk boys, why don't you give us your equipment? Like, you rich, privileged, blah, blah, blah. It was just like, in the whole thing in my head was like, until like a year or two ago, I lived in a trailer and I don't have nice equipment.
That drum set I was given when I was 5.
Yeah, and it's neither here nor there. I'm not here to debate our at this point in our lives. We're not here to debate our privilege. It was just I think the thing still to this day was like, well, I'm not saying that you didn't have some points, but there was a lot of other people you could have said that to. Although I also think it was intentional because they probably figured we would be the most receptive to it.
Right. So. And that didn't make it any better. Because that actually memory just came back. I was just like really pissed off at that. Mm-hmm. And like, I don't know, whatever. And then I'm not going to repeat what Chris said, but Chris said some.
No, Chris talked some personal stuff. Yeah,
some really personal stuff on stage, which actually won them over. Then, by the way, in the crowd there, the Chicago people. Then they were like, "Oh, thank you, that was real brave," and it was like, okay. So, and again, no details, but it was something I was not aware of, and we were just like.
Yeah, I think I was the only one who was aware of it.
Yeah, it even stunned us. So we were just like, wow, like that made it even more like real heavy. Sorry.
You know what the funny thing too about that is, to this day, the way I envision that is that I was standing in the audience hearing it for some reason. And obviously I wasn't. I was on the stage with you guys, but like, yeah.
And that's what it felt like though, because it was just like, wow. So... And I don't remember what happened with Joe, if there's anything going on, but
it was no different. I mean, Joe was just Joe.
Yeah,
me and Joe. I think me and Joe were probably in the best mindsets that show.
So I think at that point it was just like, okay, well, he just let go something pretty serious, so I'm gonna let go. So, and I had no plan. I just thought that I should talk about it because, again, we thought this was normal. We thought this is what you did. So I'm up there literally blubbering about my relationship problems, basically to the person.
But it was such a sweet sort of teenage boy way. It wasn't like it was very kind of awkward and when you like someone and
right. Yeah, it was. Yeah, and it was legit. I mean, there was no ulterior motive to it. I was just like, okay, this is the time to do this, which honestly, maybe it wasn't, but I did. And I just lost it, as we're talking about it and stuff. And again, I'm telling this to the person in the audience watching me right now. She was there, and I just couldn't, whatever. And I just handed Joe the mic back, and I think he pretty much said something along the lines of that's exactly what this song is about. And so it was not fun. I mean, it was for half of us, it was not fun. And
I mean, obviously I was somewhat affected by that, but other than that, I mean, I was in a pretty I just moved out on my own, had freedom, and
it's totally understandable. So I feel like the collective group of people just kind of went, oh, after that, because we played and it didn't really, to me, didn't feel totally resolved. It helped a little bit, but whatever. And then we got a hotel room after that.
So Aragorn, someone we've talked about a couple of times in this podcast, he was from Grand Rapids originally. He he had a kid at a young age, and it was clear he wasn't going to be in the kid's life, really. He was, so at 16 or 17, he ended up being moved out to Marin County, California, right above the Bay Area. Or I guess technically, is that still Bay Area, Ian?
I don't even know.
It's Marin County. So anyways, near San Francisco, near Oakland, near
it probably is then, yeah.
Yeah. And he'd already been a punk kid in Grand Rapids, but then he ended up out in the Bay Area going to shows in Gilman and blah, blah, blah. And he was, whatever. Anyways, he ended up being one of those people who would sort of wander from town to town and kind of like be friends with people. And then he would do something that would like make it so that those people didn't want him there anymore or it's like, oh, things are getting hot, I need to get out of here.
Right. He
wasn't a rad dude. I'm not attacking the dead, but like in some ways he was a good dude in the sense that he wielded a tremendous amount of influence on me, but like at that time in my life. But he was also kind of sketchy with women. And then he would kind of just be like, oh, they just don't understand where I'm coming from. But yeah. So anyways, he managed a hotel in Ann Arbor at that time. And by the way, so he's like a night manager at this kind of bougie ass hotel in Ann Arbor. And then during the day he would sleep in his van. Didn't even have a comped, hotel room. But anyway, so he comped, like, it had to have been 30 or 40 kids.
There's a lot of people, yeah.
Yeah, there were a lot of us. And there was...
Is there a story coming up?
Yeah. Okay. I'm not gonna mention any names. But me and Dusty were laying in bed with two other people who were friends of ours. And they were talking the whole night, and everybody's just like, shut the fuck up. Just go to sleep. Please stop talking. We have to get up in the morning. We have to get up early so that the norms don't see us at the continental breakfast, And, so then eventually Dusty and I fall asleep, and then I wake up to the bed kind of like shaking. And then these two people whisper to each other, go in the bathroom, and Dusty turns around to me and is like, is that just me, or was that some really intense foreplay? And I was like, fuck. Like, I was super stoked because I was like, oh, okay, I wasn't wrong about this. So
Boy.
Yeah, so these two people dry humped in the bathroom, and it caused some drama. Like, and there was a letter writing campaign between the two of them, and yeah, it was weird.
Even dry humping will get you in trouble.
Back then, dry humping gets you canceled, even when it's mutual.
And you never know. It might come out during a Foursquare game. You never know. It could happen.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing is, so just sort of what happened is they dry humped in the bathroom and then acted like nothing happened, but me and Dusty told everyone what happened. And then like it comes out, and one of them didn't care. It was just like, oh yeah, we hooked up in the bathroom, whatever. And then the other person wrote a letter to them, like, and they saw each other at a show, and they had worked it out with each other, like, oh, we're cool, we're good, yeah, we shouldn't do that again. That was a bad choice on our part, all's well. But this person got mad because the other person didn't return their letter. Like, didn't write, even though they had talked to each other in person about this. Like, so it became a zine call out.
Oh.
Yeah. Ooh.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Anyway, so that happened. And then we drove back to Kalamazoo.
Oh, I had a real bad time in another hotel room in that same hotel, but we were in a different room, and I was after all of that, awkward shit that I said. I had a long conversation, and that didn't work out well either. So,
but the funny thing is that I remember, like, it seemed like that had kind of, at least very temporarily, made things a little better between the two of you at that
very
time.
Little, but yeah.
But
anyway, yes, we drove back,
and I want to say that show was in. I
think it said October or November.
October 7th, 1995.
Yep. All right.
And that sounds about right. So I guess it would have had to have been, but that's the weird thing is I guess maybe, yeah, okay, just like within a week or two of that fest, me and Andy and Joe moved into that house on Davis Street.
Yeah.
So, and then I guess it was probably in November, early November, mid-November, something like that.
Yeah, we played that fast.
Show. Yeah, and then we went back, and I don't know, we may have played some local shows. I don't even remember.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of local shows we're not mentioning because there's not much to mention about them, to be quite honest.
They happened.
They happened. I'm not saying that we didn't play well. Some of them we did, but there just isn't any real stories with them.
Yeah.
Like our local shows were always kind of like, oh yeah, 20 kids showed out. We played. It was cool. Maybe one of the bands we played with said they liked us. Who knows?
Right.
But yeah. So it was that block of shows. We played Flint. Then we drove that very same night down to Detroit. Played in Detroit, and then we drove to Canada.
Which there was some point of contention.
The things I remember, I had just gotten for Christmas a new pair of Air Max 1s because they looked straight edge. We again, we did the weird entourage where I think some of you rode with Bill in his van. I think Bill maybe. I think that by that point that van that we had just was no good anymore.
Yeah.
But I don't remember who all rode with Bill. I definitely didn't. I rode with Dusty and Andy Cornell and possibly Adam Kuthi. And you were probably, it's strange, like most of the time I was in a different vehicle and you were in the vehicle that you could sleep in.
Right. That was the requirements. Can I sleep here? Yes. Good. I'm going with you.
Yeah. So I guess, we drove from Kalamazoo to Flint, Michigan. And I think our friends in Bev Cologne got us a show in Flint. It was, I want to say, it was like the 30th of December. I guess we got to the show, or before the show, Matt Weeks had told Joe, oh, once you're done there, drive down to Detroit and you can play the show at the Trumbleplex with us. So I think we played okay. We played a really quick set.
It was like in the middle of a floor.
Yeah.
It seems like they both were, actually. They were both like...
Oh, yeah. No, none of... Like, there was a stage at the Trumbull, but we didn't use it.
Right.
But, yeah, like, I don't remember much about it. It was very, like, sort of... I don't think that the people in Flint were, like, particularly... They weren't unimpressed, but they weren't particularly receptive to us either.
Well, but it also was just, like, in and out, like... Because we had to go to this other show, so it was like, bang,
Yeah, I think that's the only time in my life I've ever done that, actually. Like, done a bang on shows. Like, I think, like, the way I recall it, like, and I was excited. It was the first time for us actually playing in the city of Detroit. Like, not, like, somewhere near Detroit, but, like, in the city of Detroit. So I don't remember much about it other than, like, I feel like we played, and we probably played pretty well, but also, like, we're just, like, in my head at least, I was like, oh man, gotta get this done, get paid, and drive down to Detroit.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, that's what it felt like.
Yeah. So, like, we played a set, I think we got paid $40 or $50. I think basically they tried to plead with us to like stay longer because not many people had shown up yet. So they were like, you could get paid more if you hang out a little longer. It's just like, we'll take this, 30 or $40 and get going. We don't care. So we drove, all of us. It's interesting, just kind of as an aside, I watched that Detroit hardcore documentary, Dope Hookers and Pavement, which is in the same basic neighborhood like the Cass Corridor, which is where the Trumbleplex was. And it was a scary neighborhood. Like, it hadn't been not scary since the riots. But I think it was also like some people were like, oh, it was scary, but like people who were from Detroit were also like, I mean, yeah, there's sketchy things that happened, but it was Wayne State University campus. It's not that bad.
Right.
You know? But yeah, to think about it, honestly, like all of us going in the middle of the night, like it was probably 9 or 10 o'clock at night, because it was like an hour drive south, I think, to Detroit.
Yeah. But
like going there, that neighborhood, it wasn't a bad neighborhood, but it wasn't a really good neighborhood either.
It's one that your car could get broken into very easily. Yeah, and I mean, I just remember my first, and this is even from Hamtramck. Like, I remember the first time, which was later on, actually, but I mean, like, everything looked like it had been on fire at least once. Like, everything. The road looked burnt. So, like, that's when you go to Detroit, you're like, fuck, everything has been on fire at some point. Wow. So it's, there's a foreboding vibe to it if you're not used to that. Yeah, if you're not from Detroit. Well, and the thing, anyone who lives in Detroit would always kind of like sidestep it. Like, isn't it dangerous? It's like, Detroit's not bad. It's just, you don't hang out on your porch in Detroit. Right. But it was, I one thing that really stuck with me in that documentary was someone from like Toledo or like somewhere out in the suburbs of Detroit was like, oh man, this is my first time going to a like store to get a pop, and there's like bulletproof glass in a little turnstile that you put your money on. Yep. And yeah, that was my first experience. Not that time. I'd been to Detroit a couple of times by that point, but like that was like such a weird wake up. Oh, you go to Subway to get a fucking veggie sub, and you have to speak through 6-inch bulletproof glass to order your goddamn sub because people shoot, and there are bullet holes in that glass in places. You will see it. But yeah, like it for us it was really weird, Yeah. So we jet setted to this from one show to the next, and we get there, and who played. I don't even remember. So it was Three Studies for Crucifixion, Nama, and Coleman, and I don't remember. I feel like there had to have been some other bands playing, but I just don't remember who. But anyways, so what happened is I think we were the first band to play. The show for some reason started really fucking late, and it was really cold. This is one thing that really sticks with me from that weekend, from all of those shows. Very, very cold. Yeah. None of the venues had heat. No. It was I remember being like, oh, I don't know if I can play without gloves on, but I can't play with gloves on, so I guess I have to. And maybe it'll just heat, I'll heat myself up. But anyways, like, so we're sitting on a cement floor, or standing on a cement floor playing. And I want to say that we might have been either the first or second band to play. We played before Nama and Three. Oh, wait. No, Nama, I think, played before us. I think we played over Nama. Because here, the reason I'm saying that is there's a story that goes with this. So we played, and then this person, one of these people from Chicago, who we had met a month prior in Ann Arbor. They're everywhere. They just show up.
unannounced and unwelcomed, and just piss on your Cheerios.
This was a weird one too. So yeah.
Yeah. So we played, and she's like, I want to do a spoken word. And we're like, okay, let's have you do a spoken word. So she does some little bit where she talks about going to sports games and the We Will Rock You chant from Queen, and somehow or another it turns into talking about pimping, and basically she called out Matt Weeks on the floor, like basically called him a pimp, said he was pimping Jihad, and some weird shit like that. Because I think there had been some joking sort of conversations between possibly Matt and someone in Jihad, like, oh man, you guys you're the big seller on council, or something like that. So yeah, so then the rest of the show, I feel like Three Studies and Coleman played after us.
So, sorry, but the thing that I remember about that specifically though is that she's like, I hate records.
Oh like yeah.
She's like just all of a sudden it went into that, and it was like, what? and the thing is she's like, it's all bands that just the singer screams and does this, and she did an impersonation of Joe. She was like jumping up and down just like Joe, and then like fell backwards on the floor on her butt, and then got back up and like kept going. And we were all kind of doing the Simpsons collar pull, because like, you don't like us? Sorry about that. Fuck. But
sorry, we let you get up on and hold the mic.
but then I remember after all that, she like came up to either one of us or all of us and was like, "Oh, I loved your set."
And then right afterwards, Matt Weeks basically came up to her and was like, what the fuck are you talking about? And with good reason. I mean, what the fuck was
she talking about?
And then it turned into an argument outside with this woman, Mary, and Aragorn, and a bunch of other people. So, I don't think there was more than 20 to 30 people at the show to begin with that weren't in bands.
Yeah.
But, so sorry to Three Studies and Coleman, but, basically when they played, I don't think they probably played to more than a couple of people.
I remember seeing both of them. I think I stayed in there to see them.
Well,
and
it had to have been warmer than outside.
Right. That was the weird thing, is everybody filtered outside to hear this argument out in the fucking cold, by the way. Mm-hmm. And then, I think my reasoning was like, fuck that, it's cold. I want to stay in here where it's kind of not much warmer.
Well, and the funny thing is there were two really nice Victorian houses attached to the venue. Yeah. And I kind of feel like maybe there could have been a way where they could have talked to someone who lived there and been like, hey, can we come inside and argue, please?
Just could you make some tea and we'll sit down in a circle and argue about Matt Weeks being a pimp and records.
Records, capitalism. Yeah. Yeah, so that happened. I feel bad. I remember one distinct thing I remember was Grace was there. And at one point, they're all out there in a circle arguing with each other. and Grace steps out of the door and kind of just is like, hey, these bands are playing and no one's watching them. Can we just talk about this later? And you guys can come in and watch the bands. And Aragorn said something kind of smart ass, like, oh yeah, because that's what matters. The band playing on. Yeah. So,
yeah.
But then we all left and we got a hotel right somewhere in Detroit near the Canada border. I think there were 6 or 7 of us, maybe more, but we were all in this hotel room and you just start giggling.
This would happen, and I don't know why.
Yeah.
It got to be dead quiet. Everybody had gotten all their wiggles out, and they got into their sleeping bags, and they were laying down. And we might have still been talking or something, but it got real quiet, and I would just start laughing. And I honestly, it's probably some sort of mental stress thing. I think after playing 2 shows, having all this shit happen and have there's a lot of tension and stuff, I needed to release something. So I just started laughing. And it was kind of uncontrollable. We're just
laying in bed and you're like, and it just like became a chain. And what I remember also about is Jim McInerney, now I remember, was with us. And Jim was fucking grumpy. He's like, shut the fuck up. And then eventually he just relents and starts cracking up too. And I swear for a half an hour straight, we were laughing about nothing.
Nothing. I don't even know why I was laughing. I was just laughing. And I think
the best part was somehow we turned Jim. Like, that's the best part of it. Like,
yeah, it was just I couldn't stop. And then everybody else couldn't stop. And then we finally all went, and fell asleep. And it was fine. It was fine.
And then we walked out of the hotel in the morning and the cleaning ladies were walking. It was like, and they made some joke about our hotel room being a clown car. Which I was like, that's fine. You can say that. Just don't try to make us pay more because we will not. But
no, ma'am.
No, ma'am. But what I do remember also was then, so we got on the road and we literally just basically went through customs on the bridge and got into Windsor, and there was a McDonald's directly on the other side of that bridge.
Yeah.
And I was like, I think I was the only vegan. So it was like, you guys all like vegetarians, and I remember for some reason McDonald's breakfasts in Canada were cheaper than they were in the U.S. Oh, I think we also like switched our money over, which also like
which is
Canadian
like
dollars go
each.
a lot. Yeah, well, I think I had $100. I had switched over, but it was. I just remember you like being really stoked because you got some pancakes and you were just like had your tongue out like the side of your mouth, just like drizzling syrup on these shitty McDonald's pancakes
with the styrofoam plate, happy. The styrofoam plate that your knife would always cut through. Yeah. Awesome.
And I remember that Jim tried to take a shit in that bathroom, and someone came in, so he got stage fright and basically did not shit that whole weekend.
Yeah, fun fact, that's my fear. I'm not good. I'm still, I've been in bands for a while, and I still can't, and I cannot perform in the bathroom anywhere. Did you want to know that? No, you didn't, but now you do. You're welcome.
It couldn't have been as bad as Jim McInerney's.
Well, probably not, but that's still it's on that level though. So
yeah, and that dude was grumpy the whole goddamn weekend about something. I don't even know what. Yeah.
Also, this was the first time I think all of us had ever been in Canada. I think I can't speak.
Yeah, I want to say so. Yeah.
So and I went through. I don't know why. I just it's hey. I'm on a road trip. I'm going to another country. I'm going to do it in style. So I'm going to do it in my baby blue hospital polyester pajamas.
Oh yeah, I forgot you were wearing those still.
With the dark blue piping, and I went through the border in style, and I think we stopped at a 7-Eleven after that too. Like after
might have, because I feel like I was just like, I can't eat anything here.
I think that's why.
At the time, I think I was like super vegan, where I didn't eat refined sugars. Yeah. So I think I bought a bag of potato chips with no sugar in them.
Right, and that we stopped at like a 7-Eleven or something, and I know maybe somebody might get angry about this, but this is the first time I had ever seen somebody of from India or Middle Eastern in a turban working at a convenience store. Like that's always been a joke.
That's how country bumpkins we are, yeah.
Right, and that's the first time I had ever seen that. And also this is the first time I'd ever seen ketchup flavored potato chips, which I believe did you eat those?
Oh yeah, I still have a very strong fondness for all dress potato chips, which you can buy in the States now. So,
but at the time it was like, what the fuck is up with these potato chips? And why is the milk in bags? We're in crazy place. Like it was insane.
Yeah, it felt weird. Like the milk in the bag thing was the really weird thing to me. I don't know why. Like Yeah, ketchup flavored potato chips just made sense, and I just didn't understand why the U.S. didn't have them.
So it's hilarious that us being from Michigan, literally, Canada's cousin, like, is a huge culture shock already, and we just barely gotten across the border.
Well, and the thing that's funny about it is, like, I mean, I had relatives in Detroit, but I never really went to Detroit growing up, and my dad had been to Canada, but like I'd never been to Canada until that trip. It was weird.
Same. I mean,
but
so
we drove.
Yeah,
Dusty was real quick. Dusty bought a jar of applesauce and was drinking applesauce while driving because him and I were both pretty strict vegans at that point. Like no refined sugars. So.
You told us in kind of hushed whispers. You're like, he drank the applesauce out of the jar.
Yeah, it was really weird. Then we played some, like, again, some place, I want to say it was in Chinatown in Toronto.
Okay, it was Toronto. Okay.
Yeah, it was full on Toronto. It was cold.
Yeah.
That's what I can tell you. It was very cold. I don't think there was any heat at all. I think the only heat we got was from the lamps on the stage.
Yeah. It was a weird building. From my recollection, it almost seemed
it was long.
It was long and thin, and it looked like it was falling apart, if I remember correctly. It was like kind of like Gothic almost feeling, but it was a weird, thin, long venue with a stage at the very end, and there's a shitload of people just kind of smushed into this very thin hallway-like thing. And the stage was pretty big, if I remember. Like, it was over 6 foot.
Yeah,
and
it was probably the biggest stage we ever played on.
And by the way,
I'm not sure why that was like. I'm not sure why we were cool with that, but like,
I think they made us. I think they were like, no, you have to. You really have to. And which made sense because it was such a skinny. There's no fucking way. I mean,
well, and honestly, like, I remember Kent McLard much later, and we'll talk about this obviously at length later, but like Kent McLard, when we played that fest in Goleta, saying to us, like, I can't tell you to not play on the floor, man, but lots of people are here to see you, and no one's going to be able to see you if you're not on the stage. So why don't you just play on the stage? And we were just like, we respect your opinion, but no. But like, looking back, and the funny thing is, like, it was enough of a thing in that venue to where you walk in and there's a sign on there. Some people think it's not punk to play on a stage. We don't think that. You should play on the stage so people can see you. That, like, it was a sign. It wasn't even directed at us, but there were enough bands apparently who were just like, no, it doesn't feel right on the stage, man. We got to play on the floor.
Right.
So, yeah, I don't know how I feel about it to this day. I mean, there were a lot of times when playing on the floor just felt like the right thing to do. But in a situation where there were hundreds of people there to see us, I mean, maybe not specifically to see us, but definitely wanted to see us.
From an audio standpoint, if we would have had things mic'd and whatnot, we probably obviously would have sounded better. Some of us, won't say who, played a little too loud. Not saying who. But anyway.
Yeah, so we I don't remember. The show was like it was a long show. It was a lot of really good bands.
A lot of people, yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people, friends of ours from Michigan, because, well, Michigan, Canada, you didn't have to have a fucking passport back then to get across the border, so it was pretty easy to get over. But, like, the only bands I really specifically remember watching was Nama, who I feel like may have actually played on the floor.
No, they played on the stage.
Oh, they did?
I'm pretty sure they did, yeah.
Yeah.
Because I remember being on... For some reason, I guess just because we were one of the bands, obviously, but, like, I stayed on the stage the most of the time, I feel like.
Yeah.
And I just, between, like, Chokehold and Nama, I remember seeing them on stage, but I believe Coleman did not play on the stage.
Yeah,
in fact, I think Coleman played.
There wasn't a hard enough stuff for her to hit her head on.
Right. I think, in fact, they played on the opposite side of the venue. I feel like they played
really
by the door or something. They played definitely in a different space, and that I think that might. I obviously we saw them in Detroit. I think.
Mm-hmm.
I think I watched them, but I specifically remember seeing them in Canada, and it was. And I know maybe people don't know, but it was fucking scary.
It was intense. She was always really intense.
If you don't know, it was a 3-piece: guitar, drums, vocals. The singer was a lady, and she put her all into every single performance. And by all, I mean she scratched her face, she banged her head on the floor, she hit herself in the head, and it was not a there was no faking it. She really did that, and there was some controversy to that because some people were like, should we be watching this?
Uncomfortable. Yeah, and I get that, honestly.
I agree. I mean, it was really uncomfortable, and props to them for it's a very simple device, but it works because you're like, wow, should I be seeing this? Should this be entertainment? I'm not sure.
Well, the first time I remember seeing them real quick, I remember she had a brace on her arm. I think she had broken her like arm skateboarding.
Oh, okay.
And I feel like she actually was hitting her braced arm on the floor while singing, like insane.
Yeah. So and real quick, like. Just jumping ahead to the end of the show, when we were standing outside all packing up and getting ready to go to the place we were going to stay, they were pulling out, and that singer lady was driving, and she like leaned out. She's like, "Hey, you guys, have a happy New Year." Seriously, the nicest person. She was very nice, and she's saying this, and she's got a fucking goose egg on her head that was like so big, and she was still bleeding from the show, but she's like, hey, you guys, happy New Year. And we're just like, it's okay, hi, okay, bye, lady. Take that ice pack. The
guitarist George, real quick, I mean, he was probably 300 pounds or more. He was a big dude. And if anyone who actually listened to Constantine knows that, like, one of our things was I was insecure about being overweight. Well, by the time we started actually playing out, I wasn't really, I might have been overweight, but not by much, not very much. I was pretty slim by that point in my life.
Kind of the punk rock diet,
Yeah. But so, like, I was still kind of pressured to talk about it, not by the band, but by other people outside of the band. Like, oh, well, it's really important you talk about this issue. Okay, I'll keep talking about it. It doesn't really affect me anymore, but okay. Anyways, apparently this guitarist George, who's now passed on, R.I.P., but apparently he would tell Jason Wade of Resin, like, what's that little guy talking about? That's cute.
What's this skinny kid crying about?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's a cherished Jason Wade story. Thank you, Jason. That's amazing. That's a good one. Sorry, one more thing, and this is on video too. You can find this video of us playing in somewhere in Kalamazoo. And I think again, this might have been when you were kind of over talking about that, quite honestly. And like Joe hands you the microphone, and you're like, "This song's about being ugly," and you just hand the mic back, and Joe's like, "This song's about not being ugly." You're like, yeah, I guess you're right. You can see that. Go look for it. Go watch us right before we play I'm an Android. Go check that out. That is pure comedy right there.
And it's so me. Oh yeah, I guess I can see your side too.
Yeah, I guess you're right.
But you played with a shirt with AC/DC felt letters on there.
It said AC/DC, and on the back it said "Slick with no K." Yeah. Joel Wick was like, pointed at me. He's like, "That's what it's all about, right there." And I was like, "Yeah." AC/DC is good. If you don't like AC/DC, what's wrong with you? Don't get this boomer shit either.
I also remember like some girl bummed me out at that show because after or before we had played, I was sitting on a table because there were a bunch of distro tables and not all of them were filled up. And some girl wanted to put her like zine library out for sale or something like that. She's like, "Move your fat ass," and I was like,
"Wow!"
But then I talked to Gord about it, and Gord's like, "Did you look at her?" I was like, "No, she's pretty heavy. She was maybe trying to kid with. Maybe she was trying to flirt with you, dude. I don't know."
Wow.
But yeah, I moshed to Chokehold. That's the important takeaway.
And they did their guitars in an X.
Yeah.
There's a picture of that.
Oh, and Kent McLard was there. Kent McLard had long bleached blonde hair. He had a denim vest with Youth of Today Break Down the Wall patch on the back of it, and he kept kind of trying to talk about how like after Choco plays like, "Oh man, that was crazier than when I saw MDC in 87 or 86 or whenever the fuck he'd saw him." And at one point my friend John Skinner was making all these jokes, like anti-moshing jokes, like, "Oh, don't burst my bubble, like don't invade my safe space, blah blah blah." And Kent McLard is right in front of us, and we're just kind of like goofy kidding with each other, and eventually Kent turns around and looks at John's like, "Junior, if you don't shut the fuck up, I'm gonna burst your bubble."
Wow.
Yeah.
Editor of Heart Attack, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, it was such a weird thing, and then like John was kind of embarrassed, and I was like, "Holy shit, you just got physically threatened by the owner of Ebullition Records."
Wow.
Yeah.
You heard it here first, everybody.
I'm sure that someone else was. I want to say Andy Cornell was possibly there. Dusty was definitely there when that happened. I don't know if John would remember it. It probably didn't have as much of an effect on his life as it did on mine, apparently. And I would almost guarantee Kent would either not remember it or not cop to it. So.
Yeah. That also was. This is neither here nor there, and honestly, probably a little bit of. I don't know. I don't know what to call it. Maybe a little bit of bragging or something, or there's just a cool photo op that happened when we were playing I'm an Android, where like the usual thing, drums everywhere, and I think all I had left was the Vista Light rack tom that I was doing the tribal drum thing, and like there was just a really cool photo of me and Rich, like, and we're both kind of in this like. We're just
locked in,
and like really, it was a cool photo, and I'm still kind of miffed that they used that. They cut it up for the discography CD. They actually cut the physical photograph up.
Yeah, I wonder who took the picture.
It might have been Sean Scallon.
Yeah, I would bet he might have if we really wanted to, and sent him some money. Maybe he'd like make a print for you or something.
Yeah. Yeah, but
I would assume it did.
Photo.
Sean Scallon took every fucking picture.
Dude, seriously, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting.
I lost my drum stool at that show, and I lost that shirt directly after that show, too. So R.I.P. the AC/DC slick shirt.
And we stayed at some house after the show. Like, I guess Gord's parents weren't going to, like, let, 10 to 20 kids stay in their basement. So what I remember is we stayed somewhere out in the suburbs at I think someone's parents was out of town for the new year. And yeah, so we stayed at someone's house. We showed up there, and there were some people like drinking champagne and watching Harold and Maude.
Great movie.
Yeah, and then we slept down in a really nice finished basement.
It was a very large house, if I remember correctly.
It totally was.
Yeah.
Really nice, really, yeah. And the dudes from Drift stayed there as well. I remember in the morning they were getting ready to leave to go, I think, they played on New Year's Day in Syracuse, New York or something. And I was just like, have fun at your show, like being nice, just trying to be nice with these dudes. And they really didn't talk to me. And I was like, what's up their asses? And then someone explained to me, they don't speak English. They never learned English, or they don't have a good, grasp on English. They'd rather if you talk to them in French, I'm sure they would have gladly talked with you, but yeah, it was. And then we went.
Wait! What weren't we sleeping under a? Did we? I'm sorry. Did we freak someone out at that place too? Was there a discussion where people were like,
quite possibly. We did that a lot.
I don't remember. Maybe
Yeah.
I believe there was, though. There was like some, when you're with 20 or 30 other people, you tend to weird somebody out. And I think we ended up weirding someone else out. I don't remember who, but if you remember, please let us know.
And then I remember we stayed at, so we stayed there. We got up in the morning. We went to Gord's house and he fed us a nice meal. It was really
Wasn't
awesome.
Portraits of Past there too?
I don't think so. I think it was
maybe I'm confusing
us and some of the people, like Lars from Nama was there, and some other Michigan friends, I want to say. But yeah, and then we got on the road, and I think Andy for his mom for Christmas bought like 2 Coca-Cola 2-liter bottles in Toronto for her because they had French. So when we went through customs, they're like, what do you have? It's like, I have nothing, which I probably did. Maybe I had a bag of chips. And then Andy's like, I bought 2 bottles of Coca-Cola. They're just like, kind of like just winced and were like, go. Just go back to Michigan, please. Oh, Matt was detained at the border. Matt Weeks was detained at the border. We actually talked about this the other day, Matt and I did. And so what had happened is he didn't claim the records he was bringing across the border. And then they looked at some of the shit he had in his van, and I guess he had a Man is the Bastard patch on his jacket. And they thought that him and whoever was with him were going to a white power gathering in Toronto. So they just kept asking him questions like, where's this white power gathering? You're neo-Nazis, aren't you? Yeah, you are. So long story short, they were there for I think an hour or two. They finally let him go, kept the records, and then when he came back across the border, they made him pay $400 and he got his records back.
God damn.
Yeah. So
wow.
Those are the horror stories I've never experienced going across the border though. I've never had that problem.
One of my friends is basically the tour manager for Acid Mother's Temple from Japan, and every single time they have to do some sort of weird thing where they're like, we left a huge box of T-shirts and records at some church because we can't get them across the border. Because they're just records and shirts. There's nothing spectacular about them, but yeah.
But we had a fake contract written up for us. Just in case anyone asks, is like, oh yeah, we're going to record in Toronto.
Yeah. There's nowhere to record in the United States, but Toronto, yeah.
Yeah.
We're going to that place where Rush filmed the Limelight video. That video in the studio by the lake where they use the mountains as reverb. That one.
We really want Bob Ezrin, and he won't come across the border. So we left Canada. Andy got through the border with 2 2-liter bottles of Coca-Cola with French language on them. And we went home, and I think the next thing, which we'll talk about next episode.
Oh, Detroit Fest.
Oh yeah. We'll talk about the recording of our second 7-inch and Detroit Fest.
Thanks for listening.
Maybe some other things. Yep. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you later.
Bye-bye.
Bye.